All right. Today's an easy day, Chevra. Let's enjoy it. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Nun Aleph. We are continuing to expound the Mishnah that we had on Daf Mem Tes on the days, beginning with the concept that a person can establish an Eid of Tchumen by making an oral specific declaration as to where does one want to acquire his location of residence. We're going to have in the Gemara an asmachta for the 2,000 amas that one may walk from your makom hashvisa, even though we don't follow Shitas Rabbi Akiva. It's not going to be a din doiraisa, it's a derabanan. But nonetheless, we're going to have a very, very interesting asmachta. We're going to learn the shita of Rav Hananya based on what we had in the Mishnah, the Machlokes, whether the 2,000 amas to each direction will mean that you have a diameter of 4,000 amas in total to walk, rendering yourself, making for yourself a circle, a circular area in which you can walk, or do you make a square, a box area, which would add the corners? And we're going to have a concept that this leniency that you can walk not only in the circle but also in the added corners is also a leniency that's used for other areas in Hilchos Shabbos. Just for example, we continuously learned in Masechta Shabbos that one may not carry daled amas b'rishus harabim. Now, how do you measure the daled amas? How do you measure the daled amas? Most people think, well, if I'm picking up something over here and I walked it 4 amas, I violated daled amas. Well, see, it's not necessarily so. If we're going to square the daled amas, as we'll learn in the Gemara, you can make daled amas in a way that if you only violate carrying, if you walk in its diagonal, then you'll only be chayiv if you carried something 5.6 amas. Again, as we'll learn in the Gemara, the concept of squaring off an area in a lenient way. And finally, Daf Nun Aleph in the bottom, Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis, is going to give us 2 very different ways of understanding the whole flow of the Mishnah on Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis. It's really going to boil down to better understand the machlokes in the Mishnah. Does everyone subscribe that the main way of making an Eid of Tchumen is by placing bread? Or is the main way of making an Eid of Tchumen is going there by Raglov? And that will have a lot of consequence. In just for one example, when the Mishnah taught us this kula, that a person can make an oral declaration and with that make his makom hashvisa, not he has to be there, not he has to put food over there, was that only a heter given to a traveler? And the Gemara is going to refer to a traveler as an ani, doesn't matter how much money he has in his account. A traveler meaning someone who doesn't necessarily even have bread to place. Or does this also apply to an asher, meaning if someone is in his or her home, can they also make use of this oral declaration as long as they specify the exact makom hashvisa? And as long as the makom hashvisa is within 2,000 amas from where they are, and other details that we'll learn today on Daf Nun Aleph on the top, can that even apply to an asher again, or is it only for the traveler, meaning in the words of the Chazal here, only for an ani? Okay, we're going to start on Daf Nun Amud Beis. We left off 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid. All of these lines is simply the Gemara quoting, referring back to the Mishnah on Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis, that Omar Shvisasim Bi'ikaroi, once the person who makes this declaration gives a specific place, so the tree, let's say the tree occupies 8 amas or 12 amas, as we learned above in the Amid. But the person says, no, I want my eruv to be by the trunk, then as long as, it sounds from the Mishnah, that the trunk is already within one's current home. So if the trunk of the tree is 2,000 amas away from this person, and on the other side, the house is weiter 2,000 amas away, it's an effective aid of tchum. And then again, because he indeed made the trunk his makom hashvisa, and wherever your place of shvisa is, you can walk in all directions to each side, 2,000 amas. So nimsa mahalech meshech hashecha dalid alafim ama, because you affected your Eid of Tchumen with this oral declaration. Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. Now the Gemara is going to impose a real limitation to this leniency. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Vehu, when is such a declaration possible as only that from when he makes the declaration, had he chosen to be ma'ariv biragloi, had he chosen to make it there, he would have had enough time before Shabbos to reach the trunk of the tree. So potentially he could have been ma'ariv biraglov. So we gave him a kula that you can make a oral declaration. Now, guys, appreciate something. If he would have made this declaration not 10 minutes before Shabbos, but 20 minutes before Shabbos, had he made this declaration an hour before Shabbos, even the better, even the better. In other words, the vart is that you're traveling. The case in the Mishnah here, you're traveling. You don't have to actually go over there. As long as you specify which location will be your Market Mashvisa, you affect a native Tchumen over there, but you have to potentially be able to get there. The Mishnah uses the words running because the Mishnah spoke about it's getting dark. It's getting dark. In other words, it's almost Shabbos, okay, but still 2,000 amas. If you would have run, you would have gotten there. Amalei Abaya, but how does that fit in the words in the Mishnah? Now, by the way, if you go back, we read the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi doesn't have exactly the words that the Gemara is quoting. It's already in the side of the Mishnah. Yeah, the Gemara is quoting the words we have in our Mishnah here in the Babli, right? But in the Yerushalmi it says, he was afraid that it's going to get dark. From the words that we have in the Yerushalmi, Abayis Kasha is not so strong. Abayis Kasha is dafka from the version we have in the Babli. Chashchalei means it's getting dark. It's mashma that he cannot make it there. It's getting dark on him. So the Gemara answers, no. Let me tell you what the Mishnah means. He really is trying to make it home. He doesn't care about the tree. He doesn't care about his current location. Chashchalei beisai. It's so late Friday afternoon that even running, he won't make 4,000 amas. He won't make it home. Indeed. That's one way of farenfering Rava, that the Mishnah, the words of the Mishnah should not be soiser his limitation. Or Ikeda Amri, Rava gave another answer that Amar Rava to Abayis Kasha, Chashaloi, right? It's getting dark, meaning not to the house, to the tree. But you know what, Pshat, it's getting too late. It's already too late in the afternoon. Ki mazgi kali kali. If he's going to continue to walk slowly the way he was walking up until now, he'll never make it there. So it's getting dark, so he can make a normal declaration. Abu Rayid, but if he would run, he doesn't want to run. If he would run, then he would be able to make it to the trunk of the tree. Bottom line is, whichever words Rava answered, Rava standing with his limitation, a verbal specific declaration, taka works, but only if he could have potentially himself be ma'ariv beragloi in the place where he's being kohen as makem ashvis. Says the Gemara story. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi, yes.
At this point in understanding Rava, would this apply to your house as well? Let's say you're almost 2,000 amas from your house, but you're not going to make it before dark. What do you say that you can't go back to your house?
Well, I guess if I'm 2,000 amas before my house, even without me not making any makem ashvisa, means even if my current place will be my makem ashvisa, I can walk from my makem ashvisa 2,000 amas. So I can nonetheless make it to my house. Having said that, will I be allowed to go to the other side of my house? No, because I already went my max. So I'm just, you could make this oral declaration, correct, as long as you could physically make it there. Yes, Danny. I just pointed out that to make it to your house, you don't even have to do it. But if you want to go to the other side of your house, another 2,000 amas, and that's why you want to make your house, your makem ashvisa, you can make an oral declaration. Yes.
Right, but your default makem ashvisa is your house. Normally, you don't have to make a declaration, right?
Make a declaration. Of course, you have to make a declaration. Because
every Shabbos, do I make a declaration? My house is my makem ashvisa.
Because you are in your house, or you are in your city. Here in LA, our makem ashvisa is the whole Los Angeles, because we live in a city. Correct. So we are dear Baragla, we're out of Baragla. We're there. Okay. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef, they were traveling. And Amalei Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi tells Rabbi Yosef the same. Obviously, they needed to get to a location, and they needed to rely upon this heter on Mantesamid days to make a declaration. They knew obviously the din that you have to specify exactly where, and Rabbi specified. He said to Hey Shvisa Seinu, spoke for both of them. to say dikla under the date palm, but a date palm was not specific enough because there were probably a few date palms. But the Savalachoya, the one that's supporting its neighbor, he specified which tree. Now, guys, once you specify the tree, these trees took up 4 amas. It wasn't this large tree, so that was good enough. But he specified the tree. Or other people say that he gave another way of being another specificity to clarify which tree. Amar law. That to say dikla, we're going to be kind of our shvisa under the date palm, the parik mari mikarga, that relieves its owner from paying taxes, which means there was one date tree that produced so many dates that it brought in so much income that the owner's taxes were covered just from that tree. Okay, no, it's the bottom line is he specified the tree. Now, Yediya Leimar, the Rabbi asked Rabbi Yosef, do you know what tree I'm referring to? So Amalei, Rabbi Yosef tells Rabbi, no, lo yadanale. I don't know exactly what tree. So Amalei, now what did we learn on Daf Nun Amud Beis in a Braisa? Another leniency, that even though you don't know the specific location, if I know, I can do it on your behalf. So if we're relying on that also. So Amalei, so Rabbi tells Rabbi Yosef, Smechalai. And the Tanya, and he's quoting the Braisa that we learned on it's at Tesefta on Daf Nun Amud Beis. But Rabbi added something. He added Rabbi Yossi. When we learned yesterday the Braisa, we didn't have a Rabbi Yossi written in there. Rabbi Yossi if there were 2 people walking together, and Echad Makir, one knew this specific location. The Echad She'ena Makir, there's a way around it. Zeh She'ena Makir, Moiser Shvisosei L'Makir, and Zeh She'makir Omer Tehei Shvisoseinu B'Makom Plani. Okay, so Rabbi Yosef here's a Tosefta that was said by the Tana Rabbi Yosef, he right away accepted it. Says the Gemara, you should know that Velohi, the emes is, not the Braisa is emes, but Rabbi Yosef was not the author of this Braisa. That Leitana Leike Rabbi Yosef. Even Rabbi never learned the Tosefta beginning with Rabbi Yosef Yomer. Why did he tell Rabbi Yosef when he quoted this Tosefta Rabbi Yosef Yomer? Because he wanted to make sure that Rabbi Yosef will accept this Braisa. Had he not inserted the words Rabbi Yosef Yomer, Rabbi Yosef would have said maybe not. And Rabbi wanted to help Rabbi Yosef. Why, if now that he added the words Rabbi Yosef, why was he certain that Rabbi Yosef would accept it? Because of the klal, more klali halacha. The Rabbi Yosef in the mukai imai, right? We have this in many places. So here we have an interesting phenomenon. This is not the only time, but it's quite unusual that an Amayra felt that it's correct. Since Rabbi knew that this is the halacha, he had no doubt about it. He also had a suspicion that maybe Rabbi Yosef would have rejected it. And that would have substantially hurt Rabbi Yosef's ability of having a normal Shabbos. He would have been stuck. So he felt that it's justified. He was saying, I know this is the halacha. I know this is the halacha. The way he said it was, Rabbi Yosef Omer. Okay, this is a little bit, people can raise their eyebrows. The Chassam Sofer famously used to say that if you, I'll up to what he said, if you want to repeat my Torah on your name, I give you permission. I only ask of you, don't share your Torahs quoting the Chassam Sofer. That was a Gavaldik word. The point is that sometimes, why would people want to quote the Chassam Sofer? Because they want the listener to be convinced that Azoy is like the halacha. Now, if the Chassam Sofer didn't say it, then he didn't want people to quote it. But in our case, Rabbi was convinced that this is the halacha, so he put on top of it the Rebbe gesagt. The Rebbe gesagt. Who's going to argue with that? Okay. Now, if Eina Makir, what did the Mishnah say? Then. And he makes a declaration, the guy's traveling and he says, okay, I don't know the tree. He didn't know the halacha that you can make a verbal declaration. And he's saying, well, I'm taking in Shabbos over here. So the Mishnah says that what? That Zachalei Mekoimai Alpayim Am. Says the Gemara, Hani Alpayim Amma Heichem Ksivan. Keep on saying 2,000 Amos, 2,000 Amos, 2,000 Amos. Finally, in the Afnon Aleph, where do we get that from? Now, yeah, we know that really, Rabbi Kiva holds it to Doiraisa. Everyone else ascribes to Tchumen D'Rabbanan. Okay, so where did the Rabbanan get it from? So we're going to have the answer here, obviously, will be an asmachta. But Chevra, this is going to be one of the longest asmachtas you probably will ever learn. It's going to be a Gezeda Shava based on a Gezeda Shava, Gezeda Shava, Gezeda Shava, Gezeda Shava. It's going to be Freilach. So the Tanya, guys, don't get nervous. It says in a Braisa, and we're quoting a pasuk that we just had before in Bishalach, that Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden, first of all, the manna fell double portions on Friday. Top of that, Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Yidden, Shvu ish tachtov, and we already learned above, Shvu ish tachtov was said to those who did not listen to Moshe, and they left the Machna, and they went beyond the Tchum. Once you go beyond the Tchum, now you're stuck to your Dalad Damas. That was the source. Remember that? Shvu ish kitachtov, the kitachtov. Elu arba amas. Now it says right in the pasuk al yetzi ishmem kaimai. So what does it mean al yetzi ishmem kaimai? Taichi is this was said by Moshe Rabbeinu not for those who already violated his ask. No, those who are going to follow. You're living in the Machna. Don't leave your place. Now, what does it mean? Don't leave the place. It doesn't mean that you can't leave the Machna of the Yidden one step or 4 amas or 10 amas. No, it means don't go beyond Alpayim Am. How do you know that? Minolan, Amar Rab Chizda, Lomadnu. Listen, Makayim mi Makayim. Step number 1, first Gezeda Shava. Chevra, for the sake of brevity and Achmanis, we encourage everyone on their own to read the Rashi, to know all the psukim. We'll get Makayim mi Makayim. Then the next step is Makayim from Nisa. Then Nisa mi Nisa. Nisa mi Gvul. Gvul mi Gvul. Gvul mi Chutz. And finally, the last step is Chutz from Chutz. Now I'll speak out the last step. It's all psukim in the Torah. The Chutz is referring to a word we have in Parshas Masei regarding the Midrash, regarding the open areas that Hashem commanded for us to leave around the Arei Halavim. How much, now really it wasn't all real open space. The Midrash of all these Arei Halavim, the Torah says explicitly, was a 2,000 Amma area. And the rule is that the inner 1,000th Amma area all around the city needed to be taka left open, meaning uncultivated, garnished, grass, beautiful. And then the outer additional 1,000 amas, you could plant over there a vineyard, you can have a field, but no buildings. And these 2,000 amas, it says, the Torah says, chutz, the last narrow line in the Amid, umadoisem, you should measure around the Arei Halavim, the first white line, michutz le'ir, as pa'as kedma, right? Alpayim ba'ama, and the pasuk goes through all the 4 directions, and each direction you have alpayim amma. Since you have the words there, chutz, mechutz, so again, this whole link, Makim, Nisa, Gevul, Chutz, you got yourself your Asmachta Dika Gezeda Shava. How great is that? Now, people Bachal bring up, Ein Adam Don Gezeda Shava Elim Kain Lamad Kain Mirabai. How can we make an Asmachta with the Gezeda Shava? How's that even Shaykh? Because if it's a Rabbanan, that means that God did not teach it. And that really opens up a very important, just to share what many Rishonim say regarding an asmachta, and even regarding the Rabbanans, that God said this Gezeda Shava. It was a Rabbanan. It was a Rabbanan. But when you learn an asmachta, it's more, an asmachta is more than people think. The Chachamim, people think by a gematria. They found up by gematria. They found up as an asmachta. No. The Hashem told to Moshe Rabbeinu that the Chachamim are going to come with a 2,000 amma. Here you have yourself an asmachta. That means that the Oibishter is involved in the Takanas Darabanan. It's a partnership, which is like why when we keep our mitzvah Darabanan, we make a bracha shekin shara the mitzvah. There is a loisasa. There's an involvement in Hashem in the Takanas Chachanim. And this is going to be a very important source, that you can have a din Darabanan that's based on an asmachta, but what's the asmachta? Gezeda Shava. And look how great this Gezeda Shava is. Okay. Now a detail. If the last step is the word chutz, well, let's stick to Parshas Masei. There, like we just mentioned, the general Midrash is 2,000 amas, but it's really broken down into 2 parts. The inner 1,000 uncultivated, and the outer where you can plant a kedem or a sadem. So over there it says, V'nelev mikir ha'ir v'chutza elef ama. Also the word chutza. Now I know chutz and chutz are not exactly the same, but why can't you use that as the Gezeda Shava? So the Gemara says, again, if the asmachta just would have been stam and asmachta, then it's a nonsensical question. No, Chazal wanted 2,000 amas, so they're going to use dafka the chutz from the 2,000 amas, but it's not so. No, we had a Masoida that later the Chachamim are going to come along with the 2,000 amma. This is the Gezeda Shava, so it has to fit. Why didn't you use it from the chutza? Answers the Gemara done in chutz michutz. They ain't done in chutz michutza. Chutz is more similar. Right here, al yetze ish v'mechaymai. In this pasuk, you have the word chutz. Okay. I mean, makim from chutz. We already have a klal that when you use Gzeira Shava, the words don't have to exactly fit. The content has to fit, not the exact words. And the source of that is a ton of the Beit Yishmael. We have this so many times. Two psukim in Parshas Mitzayra. V'shava kohen u'ba kohen. They were speaking about a house that is becoming a bayis hamenuga. And there you have the first week, and then the house becomes a musgar, and then the coin comes back, and then another week goes by, and then the coin yet returns again. And there are certain prati dinim that are written in one return and not in the other return. And we learn all one from the other. How do we learn them? Through a Gzeira Shava. What's the Gzeira Shava? From the words Vishav Uba. B'chlal, two different words. Elama, they both refer to the coin coming yet back again to check the house. Zui Shiva. Zui Bia, since it means the same thing, we can use this as Gzeira Shava. So here's back to the kasha. Chutza is a lot closer than Shavu Ba. Answers the Gemara. Again, the answer is also, we have this throughout Shas. Hanamili, when, yes, everyone agrees to the Tanach of the Beit Yishmael. Yes, we could make a Gzeira Shava if the content of two words match, even though the actual Chitzoni's word does not. But you know when? Hanamila, the Lekemita the Damila. If there's no other word that is even more similar, even though only the Chitzoni's. But over here, the Ikamide, the Damila, right? Chutz or chutza. So which one is more dummy? Chutz. So therefore, Damila Yalfinan, we compare to that which it is most similar. We reject the chutza, and that's your asmachta dika. Many step Gzeira Shava to come to the whole concept of not walking beyond 2,000 amas. Beautiful. 2 dots. Alpayim ama agulois. Right, guys. In the Mishnah we had agulois, and then who said agulois? Rab Chanina ben Antignois, and then the Chachamim say mirubaois. So as we already showed a picture when we learned, you begin with agulois very easy. If you're the ground zero, take a measuring stick, go north 2,000, south 2,000, east 2,000, west 2,000, and circle that area. Now in the circle, the diameter will be 4,000 amas. But the diameter by a circle will only be in the middle of the circle, where there is the most distance from one edge to the other. But as you go to the top of the circle, the diameter becomes smaller. Ultimately, at the two ends, there won't be any corners. The Chachamim say, make the circle, and then add to it corners. Then make a box around the circle. So the diameter will be the same, but you're going to benefit a lot of space, which the Mishnah calls it, you gain the corners. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chanina ben Antignois, who says agulois, manavshach. How does he come to that? Why not? Now that we established our smachta from the Midrash Yarim, this is great. Let's go into what it says by the Midrash of the Arei Halavim. When the Oivishter says you have to leave around their cities 2,000 amas, it says explicitly that it has to be a box, because the Torah uses the words peyos. Manashach is like Gzeira Shava from the Arei Halavim. The word peyos means corners. A circle has no corners. That's the whole vart of peyos, that we don't circle the hair. You leave a corner. So Elamai, if he's rejecting the corners, agulois, that means he doesn't hold of the Gzeira Shava. So then the kasha anab chanina ben antignois. So alpayim ama minole. Answers the Gemara lo'ilam is like Gzeira Shava. Elama v'shana Shabbos will be different from the Arei Halavim, because over there by the Levium, the Torah uses a word which normally is a exclusionary word, zeh. This, zeh yelachem migrashei ha'arim. The word zeh, superfluous, zeh means that there is a detail that is only here. Meaning, what detail? The payas, the corners. L'zeh atanois and payas, v'yatanois and payas l'shoiv say Shabbos. Upa Ivan Abanan, who hold you do make a box. You allow people to walk a lot more than the 2,000 amas. So Rabbanan, he'll say that Tanei, Rabbanan will answer themselves by a braisa taught by Rav Hananya, that actually Zeh here means to include. Zeh erech hafadinyan. Zeh means kazeh you But listen to these words. Kol Sheifsei Shabbos. All of the laws regarding shiurei Shabbos have to be made squared like the Midrash She'arim. What does all the laws of Shabbos include? Well, let's begin now with ERUVIN. That's going to be a kula, right? That you don't just make a diameter 4,000 amos and make yourself a circle. You add to it the corners. But when Rab Hananya says Kol Sheifsei Shabbos, so let's go into another example. We keep on learning this the whole Masechta Shabbos, carrying 4 amos. So people think, well, if I picked up something here, God forbid, and I walk daled amos, not under 4 amos, 4 amos or more, right? I violated Shabbos. I violated the Isur D'Oraisa. But you know when you're chayiv, if you square the location. So guys, if you want to take a look, it's in the Rabbeinu Hananel, all the way by me in the bottom of the Amid. All right? Do you see what happens? If you don't allow yourself to have a circle, if you add corners, then you can always place the box in a direction that will afford you a leniency. The math will be, Rashi gives all the details, the formula that they had then, the formula that people have now. If you take a square that each side is 4 amos, 4, 4, 4, 4, not very good, thank you. Not a diameter, a circle of 4 amos, that only in the widest part of the circle you have 4. But if you do that in a box, if you measure the box in its diagonal, which means in its largest open space, you're going to have from 4 amos will become 5.6 amos. So from wherever you begin carrying, you are going to say that when you broke, God forbid, Shabbos, only when you carried it 5.6 amos. If you didn't carry it 5.6 amos, then you didn't carry a daled amos. How did you not carry a daled amos? You carried it 4 amos. No, you didn't carry it 4 amos. Because we squared the 4 amos, we add the corners, and then we say that you were walking in its diagonal. You can turn the box any way you want. Only if you carry it by its diagonal. Yovaldik. Rav Papa says Rav Papa, Badiklan Rava. Rava was examining us, or Rava was heading us. If you have a pillar in the Shusarabim that is tall 10 tvachim and it's wide 4. It's wide 4. And we keep on learning that's the minimum shiur of you creating a Reshus HaYachid. So here's the question. Is it only considered a Reshus HaYachid if it's a square, which means it occupies more space, each side being 4 amos, 4, 4, 4, 4. I'm sorry, 4 tvachim, by 4, 4, 4, 4. Are you lying or not? Or even if it's a circle, as long as in its diameter you have 4, you already have a Reshus HaYachid. Right it. So says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of the Amid, here also, that's the word of Rav Hananya, Kol Sheifsei Shabbos. Lav Hainu the Rav Hananya. The Tanya Rav Hananya Omer, Kozeh you Kol Sheifsei Shabbos. Indeed, if you have taka 4 in the diameter, but you don't have it 4, 4, 4, 4, then you're not going to have for yourself a Reshus HaYachid. Moededik. And by the way, if it's 10 tvachim tall and it's not 4 by 4, this is called a Makam Tur. In other words, indeed, we square all of the shiurim of Shabbos. Okay. Now, before we read the Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah, if you even want to turn back just for a moment, you'll see how there are really 2 very different ways of learning the whole flow of the Mishnah and Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis. The Mishnah began with the concept of Misha Baba Derech. That was the first din of the Mishnah, that you can make a specific verbal declaration and you can establish your Eruv Tchum, taka, like we learned today with Rava, in a location, even up to 2,000 amos away from you, as long as you can run and make it there, but you don't even have to be there. Verbal declaration. Din number 2, so din rule number 1, law number 1, then the Mishnah gave law number 2. That if a person doesn't know a specific location or a person doesn't know about this din, we spoke about the din of being ma'arev beraglov. That was din number 2. Now we're going to discount now this whole question of circle and square. It's not negaya. Then the Mishnah made, I'm going to call this a statement. The Mishnah begins statement number 1. V'zuhi sha'amru ha'ani ma'arav beraglov. V'zuhi sha'amru ha'ani ma'arav beraglov. Okay, where he is. Then Rav Meir says only an ani. Rabbi Yehuda says an ani and an ashir. And then we're going to have statement number 2 in the Mishnah that v'lo ya'amru ma'arvim bepas elo lahakil al ha'ashir shelo yetziri ha'arav beraglov. Who made that statement? Only Rabbi Yehuda or Rav Meir? What case are they arguing about? Are they arguing about the law number 1 in the Mishnah, which is the law of making a verbal declaration? I've made only the ani, Rabbi Yehuda, an ani and an ashir. Or are they arguing about being ma'arif beraglov? That Rav Meir says only an ani, and Rabbi Yehuda says an ani and an ashir. That's going to be the fundamental 2 ways of learning the Mishnah, and then the rest of the flow will flow accordingly with all of the simple nafkaminas, as we'll see when we unpackage this Gemara. So there's going to be a machlokes amoraim, how to understand the flow of the Mishnah. Okay, one important intro, that normally an ani and an ashir means pashut kipshuta, an ani mit an ashir. In the context of Erev Tchumen, an ani refers to a traveler. It doesn't matter how wealthy he is, you're traveling, you don't necessarily even have food with you. It's almost Shabbos. You're cold right now, you're an ani. An usher refers to someone who is in his home, even a poor person. Poor people have a piece of bread in their home, right? We're not talking about an Evyon, but not an ani. So just in the context, not to get confused, an ani means a traveler. In other words, what we really want to know is, are these hatadim given, especially the first din in the Mishnah, that you can be ma'arav verbally, is it only for a traveler? Or even a person in his home can decide to say, you know what, as long as he's indicating a specific place that's 2,000 amas or closer from where he is, as long as he specifies it, and let's go with Rava that we learned on top of the Amit, and as long as he's able to run and get there, then he can do that as well. That's going to be the question. Okay, 2 lines before the bottom of the Amit. Zeu sha'amru ha'ani ma'arav beraglov amarav meir anu ein lanu elo ani. Now, what is he referring to? I know that the first statement, ani ma'arav beraglov, is speaking about ma'arav beraglov. But when Rav Meir says anu ein lanu elo ani, and then Rabbi Yehuda says ani and ashir, again, the question is, are they referring to the first case of the Mishnah, which is speaking about a verbal declaration? Are they arguing there? Or are they arguing on the second law in the Mishnah, that you can be ma'arev simply by stating that my muck and shvis is where my feet are, right over here? Amar Rav Nachman. First way, Amar Rav Nachman machlokes between Amir and Rabbi Yehuda is regarding the second case in the Mishnah. It actually flows, it's right adjacent to it. The Mishnah just said and made a statement that B'zui sha'amru ha'ani ma'arav beraglov, right? And Rav Meir says, 1 second. Only the ani can be ma'arav beraglov. Not someone who's sitting in not an usher. Now here, what's pshat? So that Rav Meir savar, why would he say that? Ikir erev b'pas. Really, an Erev Tchumen has to be made by placing bread. If it's not in your house, listen, in your house, it's in your house. You have bread in your house. If you want to make it any other place, you got to put food. That's no now on base. Narvas then. Only who the akilo rabbanan ilavei. So just look inside the top Rashi. Rashi already helps us. He's the best teacher. Again, I quoted that Rashi. Whenever you read the word ani, don't picture ani the way you normally think. Ani means a traveler. See the top Rashi? And normally we can assume the Eini might pass, etc., etc. Rashi writes it out by the Usher also. You look inside, keep on Rashi, 3 lines from the top. Usher means Yoshev Bebeisoi. Just if you have that in cup, you won't get confused. In other words, Rav Meir said like this: if you're traveling, Eruv is bepas. Elama, if you're traveling, they said you can be ma'arav beraglov. It's a leniency. Aval Usher, forget Rashi, Usher. Then if you want to make your Erev outside your house, in your house you have plenty of food, then go bring food there. Loy. That Shitas Rabbi, based on the rule, guys, remember this, according to Rav Nachman, Rav Meir holds, Ikir Erev Bepas. And according to Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda argues with this Nakuda. According to Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda tells Rav Meir, no, Ikir Erev is Beraglov, the opposite. Rav Yehuda says, Ikir Erev Beregel. And therefore, if that's the main way of making an Erev Tchum, it's for everyone. It's for everyone. traveling, not traveling, if I'm sitting in my house and I want my eruv to be 2,000 amos away from my house, I can walk there myself without bringing bread. Echad ani ve'echad asher. Fakert. Abol b'makim ploini. But when it comes to the first din in the Mishnah of making a verbal declaration, over there isn't even a machlokes. Divrei hakoil, that only the traveler can do it. Makes sense. You're traveling, it's getting dark, it's such a big heted. Like normally when people know ERUVIN, the little bit that we remember, people normally begin ERUVIN, God willing, next time around, you'll remember. You can make an ERUV tchumen, ma'arav beraglov, and you can do it by putting bread. Everyone knows the bread, even ma'arav beraglov. When it comes to making a verbal declaration, this detailed talk, it's only a heted given for the ani, the traveler. But an asher, meaning if you're sitting in your house, you can never establish another ERUV. Either go there or send a shliach with bread. Verbal, specific, you can run and get there, garnished. According to Rav Nachman, the machlokes Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda is, what is ikur eruv? That's gavaldik. That Rav Meir holds ikur eruv b'pas, and Rav Yehuda holds ikur eruv b'raglav. Now you got to read the flow of the Mishnah. Everything is easy now. The Zui Sha'amru is the first statement in the Mishnah. The Gemara is quoting the first statement in the Mishnah. If you want to turn back to the Mishnah, you'll chop it the whole time. Then the second statement in the Mishnah is the words Lo Yamru Ma'arvin b'pas. So the Gemara now explains with Rav Nachman. The words was Zui Sha'amru, according to Rav Nachman, Man Kitani Law, Rav Meir. And what does it refer to? It's on the last end of the Mishnah. The guy that's being ma'arev beragla. That period. And Rav Meir is takas, and based on Rav Meir l'shitase the ikur eruv b'pas. So when the Mishnah says, "Oh, you can be ma'arev beraglov," if you're here and say, "Oh, my eruv is here," even though you don't have bread, well, that's only the traveler. That's only the ani. That's what Rav Meir is saying. And then when you have later in the Mishnah the words, the second statement in the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah, quoting, who said that statement? Only Rabbi Yehuda. Only Rabbi Yehuda, because Rav Meir holds ikur eruv b'pas. Here, when he says that they only allowed you to lose, they gave you pas as a kula, what is that implying? That's not the ikur eruv. They added something. Who is saying that can't be Rav Meir? Because Rav Meir holds no, ma'arvin b'pas was the ikur din of eruv. Good. That's one way of learning the Mishnah. It's going to come out according to that l'kula alma, only an ani can make the verbal declaration. It's going to come out according to this, that whether ikur eruv b'pas or ikur eruv b'regel is a machlokes tanoi. However, Rav Chizda Amar, no. The machlokes is of Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda is not on the ma'arev b'raglav. The machlokes goes back to the first case of the Mishnah. Is the person who's saying, I want my eruv to be mama complaining. There on this says Rav Meir, oh, that's only for the ani, the asher loy. According to Rav Nachman, everyone holds of this. According to Rav Chizda, no, only Rav Meir holds of that. But Rav Yehuda holds echad ani ve'echad asher. Wow. Even though you are in your home and you have bread, you can verbally make a declaration as long as you specify and you follow Rava's limitation. But you could. Echad ani ve'echad asher. Because both Tanoim, subscribe the ikur eruv b'regel. And now let's read the Mishnah. The first statement was Oisha Amru Man Ketani La. You read inside the Mishnah. That's Rav Meir. But now that what is the machlokes according to Rav Chizda? It's only going on the Reisha. So that ba'ahaya koyit must be referring to the beginning of the Mishnah. Because ma'arev b'raglav there's no machlokes. And when it says at the end of the Mishnah, now this is a divrei hakel. Because according to Rav Chizda, there is no machlokes tanoim what's the ikur eruv. Everyone subscribes to ikur eruv b'raglav. Okay, machlokes. With this is huge, especially in light. Let's go with the light that Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda. We just learned halachic Rav Yehuda. So let me ask you: Can an usher make a verbal designation? Can an usher make a verbal designation? According to Rav Chizda, absolutely not. According to Rav Chizda, that is the machlokes between the Tanoim that Rav Meir holds not. That Rav Meir holds not. Rabbi Yehuda holds yes.
If we're going like Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Chizda, you could do it, because Rabbi Nachman, you cannot.
Very good. Okay. According to Rav Nachman, you can't do it. Exactly. Now, says the Gemara, thank you, Rav Nachman. Now, according to Bryce, and chutz l'tchum, guys, doesn't mean beyond the tchum. Just to know, chutz l'tchum means to the limit, exactly to the max. A usher should not be ma'arev beraglov. Why? So holds Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, mamish like Rav Nachman. They're arguing what's the ikar eruv. Echad ve'echad asher ma'arvin beregel. And therefore, v'yetzei asher chutz l'tchum, to the limit of the tchum, and he can make. He's there. He's beregel. V'yomer teishri sasu yomer koymi. V'zehu ikarish al eruv. Clearly, they're not arguing whether ikar eruv bepas or ikar eruv beregel. So once you have that as a premise, so everything else in the Mishnah, the whole pshat has to flow the way that Nachman explained it. Now, the tiru chachamim labal habayis l'shaleach eruv b'yadavdoi, even though ikar eruv beregel, but they were lenient. They added the pas, or b'yadnoi, or b'yad shluchai, b'shvi lo hakil olav. So that's a brais. And now we're going to have a story that's based on accepting this brais. Amar Rav Yehuda, first white line, people that originate from the city of Memel, and people that both of these peoples were in a city called Aroima. Okay, and now where they came from is not going to be negeh for the story. Obviously, there's a reason why we write it in here, but let's halk up. So Yidden are in Aroima. Second white line. That they were giving out over there. They were wealthy people, and they were charitable people. They were handing out figs, dried figs, raisins to aniyim during a year of famine. And therefore, many aniyim from the surrounding villages would come to Aroima to get food that the mamash needed. This is not only food, this is luxurious food, desserts. Uboyim aniyeh sai from the village called Kfar Shichem, and va'aniyeh Kfar Chananya. Oh, now these villages were 4,000 amas away from Aroima. So for them to be able to get to Aroima, if they would have made placing a valid eid of tchum insufficient, their village and Aroima, perfect, they would be able to get it. So these aniyim came when Friday umachshichin alat chum, and they waited at this middle point, and then that means they were all ma'arev beraglov. Now 1 second, I know we're saying that they are aniyim, but let's go back to what Rashi taught us. Aniyim and ashirim here means, in our context, are you in your home or are you traveling? They were in their home. They were in the home. If they were aniyim, but they had a piece of shtickle bread, they would have had. So if there is a machlokes Tanach here, they were ma'arev beraglov. Lamachros mashkim uboim, and based on their ma'arev beraglov, they came. What is Rabbi Yehuda trying to point out? That according to Rav Meir, right? According to Rav Nachman, the halacha. According to Rav Nachman, that's the machlokes Tanach. According to Rav Meir, ikir eruv bepas. According to Rav Nachman, they would not be allowed to do so. So first we have a braisa like Rav Nachman, and now we have a story which substantiates our klali halacha, Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. Because we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda that even an asher can be ma'arev beregel, because Rabbi Yehuda holds, even according to Rav Nachman, that ikar eruv is beraglov, and they only added pas as a kula to make things easier, but you don't need to do it. Okay. So Koren Kol Abraisa substantiates the way Rav Nachman learns. Next, Amar Avashi, no one is arguing with this. That you know what? Look at our Mishnah itself, but not the Mishnah that we already learned on Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis, but God willing, the Mishnah we're going to learn tomorrow. That Masnisin here in ERUVIN, Nami Daike, the way Rav Nachman understands. The Ktani, what will be God willing learn tomorrow? Mishi Yotzo, Le'ir, A person on Friday is going from city A to city B. Now, city A and city B, my friends, again, are exactly 4,000 amos apart, or a bit less. In other words, they are distant enough that without an 8 of Tchum, you can't go from A to B. But if you place the 8 of Tchum in the middle, then you could go. So someone went from A to B, right? However, but as he set out, he began to journey. For whatever reason, his friends made him come back, inspired him to go back. Now let me share what that accomplished. What that accomplished is that since he at least began, he was shiyotza. Not only did he intend, but he began to go. This is a Jew that has a house in city A, and he has Baruch Hashem another house in city B. By the fact that he began to go Friday to city B, we're going to consider his home city B. Which means that now that he returned to city A, he's like an ani, because he's now a traveler. Traveler's the ani. His chavedim never set out to go. His chavedim's home is now city A. They're the usher. They're in their home. Says the Mishnah, Hu muter leilach, right? He will be allowed to go to city B on Shabbos. However, v'chol b'nei ha'ir will be usher to go to the other city. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. And obviously what you have to add is that when he went out to go, he verbally, when his friends told him to come back, so he says, you know what? That tree in that trunk, he specified he was ma'arev, a verbal declaration. His friends also made a verbal declaration, but his friends cannot rely on it, and he could. And v'havina, but we understand, why not? Does a verbal declaration work or not? Why is it that he could rely on it? Who that they may not? And on that, we're going to learn that the guy who went out to go, he has 2 homes, city A, city B. And we're speaking about 2 cities that which means that 4,000 amas in between them. And he made a verbal declaration, as did his chavedim. But him, even the nafka leila urcha, that's the Mishnah's beginning, mishiyatza leilech la'ir. So we are allowed to view him as someone, he wanted to go to city B, his home is now city B for the Shabbos. Now that the poil is in city A, he's a traveler, he's an ani. So now he's an ani. And then, since he's an ani, now he can make a verbal declaration. But the Tanach, who are Rashidim Ninu, the other ones who never went out to go, we consider city A their ground zero, so their verbal declaration won't work. It's according to Rav Nachman. Alma, we see that kol b'makom ploini, that when the Mishnah begins, kol b'makom ploini, is taka l'kul only referring to an ani and not to an usher. And indeed, Shema Mino, Gevaldik. No, according to Rav Chizda, just to make it clear, according to Rav Chizda, even an usher, even when you are at home, you could make a verbal declaration. So we see from the next Mishnah that Rav Nachman's taich is taka correct. Very good. Says the Gemara, that when the Malandim that taught the Rav's children did so at times in the presence of Rav, which was quite intimidating. But the good thing is that they got more information from the great Rav. Masni lei Rav Chia bar Ashi. He was teaching, or we have from the Rosh, Rav Chama, right? Yeah, Rav Chama bar Ashi was teaching Chia, the son of Rav, but he was teaching Chia, the son of Rav, in front of Rav, and he was teaching our Mishnah, the Mishnah Nachman Testament base, that Echad Oni ve'Echad Asher, that can establish an Eruv. Now, what does that read? And Omar Rav, Sayim Ba Nami, you should add the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. So we established, first of all, that Rav Nachman's taich on the Mishnah is correct. And also, we are reiterating the obvious that halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. By the way, if you remember when we learned the klali halacha, Rav, not Rav Misharshia, not Rabbi Yechanan, but Rav rejects it. That's why Rav needed to emphasize that here, even though Rav normally doesn't follow any klalim, every case is a case, but here also we paskin, even with Rav, we paskin like the Tana Rabbi Yehuda. So now says the Gemara, Rabba bar Rav Chanan. He would regularly come from the city of Artivna to the city of Pompadisa, Daf Nun Beis, and Omar, and he made a declaration, and this declaration he made while he was still at home, while he's an Asher, and he said to Shvi Sasi Bit Sinuta. Sinuta was a defined area in between Artivna and Pompadisa. In other words, the way he made an aid of Techumen was by making a verbal declaration using the instrument we have in the beginning of Daf Mem Tesam Beis in the Mishnah. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye challenges Rabba Bar Rav Chanan. My daita. I don't understand. No, it's based on our understanding that this is subject to a machlokes, right? This is the machlokes Tanoi, but who is the machlokes in between? Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda. And we have a klal, halacha ki Rav Yehuda. Now, if Amar Rav Chizda machlokes, we're complaining. Now, if you're going to tell me that, if you're going to answer me that no, that the pshat of the Mishnah is like Rav Chizda, and based on Rav Chizda, Rav Chizda, a rich person, when you are at home, you could make a verbal declaration. That's not a good answer. Why is that a good answer? Number one, because Rav Nachman disagrees with Rav Chizda, and as we just learned on Daf Nun Aleph from Beis, we found a Baraisa that clearly states Rav Nachman's understanding. We're not even going into Rav Ash's Daikanami. And by the way, he didn't have to tell him that Rav said we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, because if you don't, not like Rav, you do accept the klali halacha. So it's a given that halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. So you know what? Rabba Bar Rav Chanan retracted, said, thank you for correcting me. Amalei Hadribi, I retract. Amar Rami Bar Chama. Hadei Amru, we learned at Shabbos, right? Yesh loy daladamas. When you establish a tchum by being ma'arif beraglov, right? So the din is that you have your daladamas, beyond which you have 2,000 amas. Oh, so now the question is, that's no one debates about that. Is when you begin, like Danny, we're in LA. When you begin 2,000 amas, you begin the 2,000 amas outside your daladamas. If you are in a city, it's really outside the whole city. So if you are in a location, the 2,000 amas is not really, you can walk more than 2,000 amas. You can walk 2,000, let's say, in 4 amas. So now the question is, Hanoisen Eseruvai, let's go to the normal case of putting pas. When you place bread, and now we say that you have 2,000 amas, how do you measure the 2,000 amas? Do you measure 2,000 amas from the bread? Or do you also first give 4 amas and then add 2,000 amas? Yeshloi in addition, daladamas, oiloi. So Amarava to Rami Bar Chama Toshima. Says in our Mishnah and Dafam Testament days that Yom Mapas Elahakil Al Ha'ashin. Shuli out of Beraglov. That really being out of the pass is only to make things easier, to make things more lenient. So Rava is going to prove from over here as Araya that when you are out of the pass, you have 2,000 amas plus 4 amas. The Amrat, if you're going to say that if you're out of the pass, you don't have the additional 4 amas. You only have exactly 2,000 amas. So how can the Mishnah say the words Hai Lahakil? That allowing you to be out of the pass is a leniency? No, it gives you less. It diminishes the space that you can walk. Is that just like when you are physically in a location, you have Aleph Daladamas. Beyond your Daladamas, you have 2,000 amas. When you're out of the pass, you have the same thing as well. Counters the Gemara, there is no raya from our Mishnah. I will say afilu hachi. I would say that maybe when you're out of the pass, you don't have daladamas plus 2,000 amas. You only have 2,000 amas. How can Rabbi Yehuda say the words that they allowed you to be out of the pass to make it easier? It's still easier. There is a big leniency here, and that is that you don't have to physically go there. So we can still use the words lahakil. But maybe there's no proof from the Mishnah. Now we're not concluding. The Gemara doesn't bring a proof either way to the inquiry of Rami Bar Chama, but just to know that the Rosh and therefore in Shulchan Aruch we do subscribe to the leniency that even when one was ma'at of the pas, you have 4 amas around the pas, and let's go back to Daf Nun Aleph. It's not stam 4 amas. It's a squared 4 amas. And then you have an additional 2,000 amas, all likula. God willing to be continued. All right. It's getting easier day by day. You can do the sleeping soon.
Rabbi.